You ever notice how love can feel too perfect? Like you met someone who completes you, who feels made just for you. But what if they really were made for you? Just not by God? Sometimes love doesn't die. It waits, inside a mirror, inside a dream, inside someone else's eyes. And when you finally let your guard down, that's when it crawls back out. These stories aren't about ghosts. They're about love that went wrong. About the moments when a heartbeat sounds like knocking from the other side. So, if you're in love right now, if someone's lying next to you while you listen to this, don't look at them. Not yet, because tonight's story might sound a little too familiar. They met the way people don't anymore, at an old record shop that smelled like dust and forgotten songs. Nathan was flipping through vinyls when her voice startled him. "You're holding that upside down," she said. He looked up to see her, Claire. Blonde hair tucked behind one ear, eyes too calm for the noise of the city. She was smiling at him like she already knew how this would end. They started talking, and within a week, she had moved into his apartment. It felt fast, but also like it was always supposed to happen. Love does that sometimes. It arrives like déjà vu. She had one strange habit. Claire kept a small notebook under her pillow. Nathan assumed it was a diary. He was wrong. The first night she stayed over, he woke to find her sitting up in bed, eyes open but unfocused, whispering to someone who wasn't there. "Claire?" She turned toward him, but her eyes didn't move. "Don't wake me," she murmured. "He'll hear." Then she lay back down and went still. The next morning, she didn't remember a thing. Nathan laughed it off, told her she was probably dreaming. She smiled and said, "Yeah, I have weird dreams sometimes." But that night, it happened again and again, every time she spoke in her sleep. She mentioned him. He never asked who he was, until one night when she whispered, "He's almost awake." Nathan waited until she went to work before he checked under the pillow. The notebook was there, small, black, with no name on it. He opened it. Inside were pages filled with Claire's handwriting. Frantic, slanted, uneven. Each page was a dream. He was in the hallway again. I saw his hand on the door. "He looks like Nathan when I look too long. I think he's learning to breathe." Nathan felt something cold slide through his chest. He kept reading. Near the back, the handwriting changed, heavier, darker, pressed into the page hard enough to tear it. He's not a dream anymore. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. Claire lay beside him, breathing slow. At 3:12 a.m., her breathing stopped. He turned. Her eyes were open, glassy. "Claire," he whispered. She smiled. Too wide. "He's awake," she said in two voices, her own and something beneath it. Deep and wrong. The lights flickered. When they came back, she was asleep again, peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Nathan didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Days passed. Claire became distant. She'd stop mid-sentence sometimes, staring into nothing, listening. When Nathan asked what was wrong, she'd shake her head. "I can't talk when he's listening." Once she fell asleep on the couch. Her phone buzzed. He picked it up to silence it, but there was a new voicemail. It was her voice, whispering. "If I wake up, he wakes up." He deleted it, terrified without knowing why. The next day, Claire came home early. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "I saw him," she said. "Who?" She pointed toward the bedroom. In the reflection, "He was standing behind you." Nathan turned, heart pounding. Nothing there. She backed away, shaking. "He likes when you don't believe me." That night, Nathan dreamed for the first time in weeks. He was standing in his living room, the air heavy like underwater. Claire was asleep on the couch. A man was crouched beside her, not a shadow, not quite human. His body twitched in slow, broken movements, like someone learning to walk. His face was Nathan's, but wrong, eyes black, smile trembling. When he spoke, the voice was hers. "You made room for me." Nathan woke up screaming. Claire wasn't beside him. She was standing in the hallway, staring into the dark bedroom, whispering, "He's waiting." Nathan stopped dreaming. Or maybe he just stopped waking. The days blurred together. The world felt thinner, quieter, like a held breath. Claire slept constantly now, no matter what time of day. Sometimes she'd sit up mid-sleep and hum the same song, an old tune Nathan didn't recognize. Haunting and low. He tried recording her once. When he played it back, the video showed her asleep. But there was someone else sitting on the edge of the bed, the man from his dream. He was watching him through the camera. Nathan dropped the phone and ran to the bedroom, tearing the sheets off, but Claire was gone. The only thing left was the notebook, lying open on the pillow. New words had appeared on the last page, still wet with ink. "He's awake now. Don't open your eyes." Behind him, the floor creaked. He turned slowly. Claire was standing there, but her body was wrong, stiff, jerky, her head tilted too far. "Claire?" he whispered. She smiled faintly. "You're still dreaming, Nathan. I'm awake." Her smile widened. "Not yet." Nathan opened his eyes. He was in bed again. Morning light filtered through the curtains. Claire was beside him, asleep. It was over. He laughed, shaky, half mad. But then he noticed her hand. It wasn't moving. It was cold. He touched her cheek. Ice. He sat up, panicked. "Claire." Her eyes opened, but they were his. "Nathan?" she said softly in his voice. He stumbled back, horror twisting his gut. In the mirror across the room, he saw himself standing. But the reflection didn't move. It smiled. "You woke up," it said. He stared. "What are you?" "You slept too long," it whispered. "Now it's my turn." The reflection stepped forward, out of the glass, out of the world, taking his face as easily as breath. Nathan couldn't scream. He tried to move, but the air around him thickened. His body felt heavy, slow. He looked down. Claire's hands were gripping his wrists. Only now they weren't hers anymore. They were his. The world bent inward, collapsing into reflection. The last thing he saw was the notebook sliding off the bed, falling open to a fresh page. The words wrote themselves. He never woke up. And then, darkness, the kind that isn't sleep, the kind that dreams. The rain had been falling for 3 straight hours when Ethan Carter pulled his truck off the highway and onto the narrow, muddy road that led deep into Hollow Creek woods. The rhythmic sound of raindrops drumming against the windshield seemed to echo his thoughts. Heavy, restless, and filled with the kind of quiet dread he couldn't name. Beside him, Lena Walsh leaned her head against the window, watching the blur of pine trees slide past through streaks of water. Her reflection in the glass looked ghostly, pale skin, soft lips, dark curls framing her face, and eyes that seemed to hold a sadness even she didn't fully understand. "This is the place?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, gripping the wheel tighter. "Yeah, my uncle's old cabin. Nobody's lived here for years." Lena smiled faintly. "Perfect for a weekend getaway, huh?" He tried to smile back, but the truth was, he wasn't sure what he was doing here. They'd been dating for 6 months, and lately, things had started to feel strange. The late-night calls that ended in silence. The way she sometimes woke up crying without remembering why. And that one time she said she saw someone standing at the end of the hall. Someone she swore looked just like him. He wanted to believe this trip would fix everything. The rain slowed as they reached the lake. The water stretched out like a sheet of black glass, perfectly still except for the faint ripples from the wind. The cabin sat near the shore, small, wooden, and almost swallowed by the forest. They stepped out, the air damp and cold. Ethan grabbed their bags and led the way up the creaking porch steps. The front door groaned when he pushed it open. Dust filled the air, and the smell of damp wood and old memories seeped out. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit by what little daylight managed to break through the heavy clouds. A fireplace sat at the far end of the room, still holding the blackened remains of wood burned long ago. Lena walked slowly, her fingers brushing over the old furniture, the photographs on the wall, faded faces of people neither of them knew. "Feels like time stopped here," she murmured. Ethan dropped the bags. "Let's get the fire going." He knelt by the hearth, arranging the logs, but as he struck the match, Lena froze near the window. "Ethan," she said softly, "there's someone out there." He looked up, startled. "What?" She didn't answer. Her hand trembled slightly as she pointed toward the tree line. He stood, walked over, and looked through the glass. Rain streaked down the pane, but beyond the reflection of their faces, he saw only trees, silent, unmoving. "There's no one," he said gently, but when he turned back to her, her face was pale, eyes wide. "He was standing right there," she whispered. "Watching us." Ethan wrapped his arms around her. "It's just the rain and shadows. You're tired." She nodded slowly, but even as she did, her gaze lingered on the glass. That night after dinner, they sat near the fire. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind. The warmth of the flames painted their faces in soft orange light. Lena rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever feel like places remember things?" she asked. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Like when something bad happens somewhere and it leaves a mark. Not one you can see, but one that just stays." He thought about his uncle. How he'd gone missing in this very forest 20 years ago. How they never found a body, just his truck by the lake. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I know what you mean." The fire crackled. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Later, when they went to bed, the storm grew worse. Rain hammered against the roof and the wind howled through the trees. Lena curled against him under the blankets, her breathing slow, steady. But sometime after midnight, Ethan woke up. The fire had burned low, leaving only faint embers. The cabin was dark, except for the faint glow of moonlight slipping through the curtains. And that's when he heard it, a whisper, soft, wet, like someone standing right beside the bed, murmuring into his ear. He froze. His heart thudded hard in his chest. He turned slowly. No one. Just Lena, asleep, her face peaceful. Then he heard it again, this time from the corner of the room. "Ethan." It was his name. He sat up, eyes straining in the dark. "Who's there?" The whisper came again, clearer now. "Don't trust her." He leapt from bed, grabbed the flashlight from his bag, and swept it across the room. Walls, floor, door. Nothing. The sound stopped, but then Lena stirred. "What's wrong?" she mumbled. He hesitated. "Nothing. I just thought I heard." He trailed off. She blinked up at him. "Heard what?" "Someone," he said finally. Lena stared at him for a long moment, then turned over. "You're just tired," she said softly. "Go back to sleep." But even as she closed her eyes, Ethan noticed her lips move again, whispering something he couldn't quite hear. He stayed awake until dawn. The next morning the air was thick and gray. Mist rolled off the lake in pale tendrils, curling between the trees. Lena made coffee while Ethan stepped outside, breathing in the cold air. The forest felt wrong, too quiet, too still. He walked down toward the water. Something about the surface caught his eye. There, just beneath the ripples, was a shape, human. He blinked, stepped closer, but the shape drifted away into the mist. "Ethan?" Lena called from the porch. He turned. "Yeah?" Her face was pale again, eyes darting toward the trees. "Did you see it?" He frowned. "See what?" "That man. He's back." Before he could answer, she backed away, trembling. "He keeps calling my name." Ethan rushed up to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Lena, look at me." "There's no one here." Tears welled in her eyes. "He's not outside, Ethan. He's inside." He froze. "What do you mean?" She shook her head, whispering, "I think he's in me." That night she wouldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, staring at the flames, whispering things under her breath, things Ethan couldn't make out. At one point she reached for his hand and smiled faintly. "Do you love me?" He nodded. "Of course I do, even if I'm not." "Me?" He laughed nervously. "What does that mean?" She looked at him with eyes that didn't seem like hers anymore. Darker, distant, ancient. "Because he says you don't. Who does?" "The one who drowned here." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" He whispered. She leaned closer, her lips barely an inch from his ear. "He said you let him die." Then she smiled, a smile that didn't belong to Lena. The fire flickered violently, and somewhere deep in the cabin walls, something knocked, slow, steady, deliberate. Ethan turned toward the sound, but when he looked back, Lena was gone. The chair where she'd sat was empty, still rocking gently as if someone had just stood up. He called her name. No answer. He grabbed the flashlight again, sweeping it across the room. The beam caught the edge of a photograph on the wall, one he hadn't noticed before. It showed his uncle standing by the lake, smiling, and beside him was Lena. The photo was dated 1984. The photograph slipped from Ethan's trembling hands and landed face down on the dusty wooden floor. The cabin had gone silent, too silent. Not even the wind dared to move. He bent down slowly, heart pounding, and turned the photo back over. The faded image stared back at him unchanged. His uncle, smiling beside that calm black lake, and Lena, his Lena, standing right there, her hand resting on his uncle's shoulder as if she belonged to that time. The date at the bottom corner was unmistakable. July 16th, 1984. But that couldn't be. Lena wasn't even born until 1998. He whispered under his breath, "What the hell is this?" The cabin answered with another sound, a soft, wet thud coming from somewhere behind the walls. He turned sharply, sweeping his flashlight toward the far side of the room. The beam landed on the old hallway that led toward the bedrooms. The door at the end was slightly ajar, and a faint trail of water shimmered on the wooden floorboards leading straight into it. "Lena?" he called. No response. He stepped closer, the floor creaking under each cautious footstep. As he pushed the door open, the smell hit him first. Damp earth, lake water, and something else. Something metallic. The bedroom was empty. The window was open, curtains swaying in the wind. The water trail ended at the foot of the bed. He crouched down, shining his light beneath it. Nothing but darkness and dust. Then, from outside came the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Ethan's pulse quickened. He stood, backing away. The doorknob to the bedroom twisted once, then again, and then a voice, soft, almost tender, came through the crack of the door. "Ethan, you shouldn't have come back." He froze. It wasn't Lena's voice. It was deeper, older, familiar, in a way that made his skin crawl. "Who's there?" he demanded, forcing strength into his voice. Silence. Then the door creaked open by itself. No one stood there, just the empty hallway and the flicker of firelight from the main room. He backed out slowly, his chest heaving. Every part of him screamed to leave, to get in the truck and drive until the trees disappeared behind him. But where was Lena? He grabbed his jacket, his flashlight trembling in his hand, and stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The moon hung low over the lake, and mist rolled off the surface like breath from something sleeping beneath it. Then he saw her. standing at the edge of the dock, her white nightgown fluttering in the wind. Her hair clung wet to her back. "Lena!" he shouted, sprinting toward her. She didn't turn around. "Lena, what the hell are you doing out here?" When he reached the dock, the boards groaned beneath his boots. He reached for her shoulder, and his hand passed right through her. He stumbled backward, eyes wide. Her reflection on the water was wrong, warped, like it belonged to someone else entirely. The face staring back from the lake was older, hollow-eyed, mouth twisted in a silent scream. Ethan blinked hard, and just like that, Lena was gone. Only the lake remained. Rippling softly, he collapsed to his knees, shaking. That's when a faint whisper drifted from the woods behind him. "She belongs to the water now." He spun around, shining the flashlight. For a split second, he saw movement between the trees, a shadow tall and thin, gliding silently. Then it was gone. He ran back to the cabin. Inside, the fire had burned out completely, leaving only darkness. The air was colder now, and the smell of wet soil was stronger, almost suffocating. He slammed the door shut, locked it, and leaned against it, trying to catch his breath. From the corner of the room, something dripped, drip, drip, drip. He turned the light toward the sound, and his heart stopped. Water was seeping down from the ceiling, running in thick streams that pooled onto the wooden floor. But the stain spreading across the boards wasn't just water. It was dark, red-brown. He stepped back. "Ethan!" The voice came from behind him. He spun around. Lena stood in the doorway. Her skin was pale, her eyes hollow. Her hair was wet, hanging over her shoulders. "Lena," he breathed. She smiled faintly. "You shouldn't have come back." He swallowed hard. "What's happening to you?" She tilted her head. No, Her voice dropped, lower now, almost inhuman. "You remember." The flashlight flickered, and suddenly, a memory slammed into his head like a wave. He was 17 again, standing on this same dock with his uncle. The summer of '98. His uncle had been drinking, laughing, saying he could swim across the lake in one go. Ethan had begged him not to go in, but he did. And halfway across, he never came back up. Ethan had run. He never told anyone what really happened. He said his uncle drowned by accident. But now, standing here, staring at Lena's ghost white face, he realized whatever lived in that lake hadn't forgotten. "Lena," he whispered, voice breaking. "You need to fight it. Whatever it is, it's using you." Her expression softened for a moment, and for the first time her eyes looked like hers again. "Ethan, help me." "I will," he said, stepping closer. "I promise." But before he could reach her, her body jerked violently, her back arching, mouth opening in a silent scream. The windows shattered inward, wind roaring through the cabin. Ethan was thrown backward into the wall. When he looked up, she was gone again. Only the echo of her whisper remained. "Find me." Under the water. By morning, the lake looked calm again, as if nothing had happened. But Ethan knew better. He packed what he could and grabbed his jacket, heading straight to town. The local sheriff's office was small, barely more than a single room with 2 desks and a coffee maker that looked older than him. The sheriff, a thick-set man in his 50s, eyed Ethan suspiciously. "So you're saying your girlfriend vanished? Out by Hollow Creek?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, I know, she's still there." "In the lake?" The sheriff sighed. "Son, that lake's been bad news for decades. People go missing, they don't come back. You stay out of there, you hear?" "But she's alive!" "I saw her." The sheriff leaned forward. "You saw something. But if she's gone, that place'll keep her." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then I'll take her back." He left before the man could stop him. By dusk, he was back at the lake, carrying a lantern and a coil of rope. The air was heavy and still. He stepped onto the dock again. The boards moaned like something alive. "Lena!" he shouted. "I'm here." No answer. He tied the rope around his waist and waded into the water. The cold bit into his skin instantly. Each step sent ripples across the surface. The world around him fell completely silent. Then he heard it, faintly, beneath the surface. A whisper echoing from below. "Ethan!" He dove. The water closed around him, dark and endless. His flashlight barely cut through it. Shapes moved in the distance, shadows that looked human, reaching, drifting. Then he saw her, Lena, floating just ahead, her hair swirling around her face, eyes open, staring. He swam toward her, reaching out. Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Her lips moved. "You came back." He tried to pull her upward, but she shook her head. "You can't take me." "You let him drown, Ethan. You gave me to him." He shook his head desperately, bubbles escaping his mouth. "No." "He wants you now." Her face twisted, and behind her, something enormous moved in the darkness. A shape. A silhouette. Long fingers stretching through the water. Ethan screamed, the sound lost in the depths. He kicked upward, pulling free, breaking the surface with a gasp. The lake was boiling, waves thrashing against the shore, the wind howling like 1,000 voices crying at once. He swam frantically back to the dock and dragged himself up. When he looked back, the water was still again, but floating near the center of the lake was Lena, her eyes glowing faintly blue in the dark. Watching him, and then she sank beneath the surface, vanishing completely. That night, he sat alone by the dead fireplace, soaked and shaking. He looked at the photo again. His uncle and Lena. Maybe she wasn't a ghost. Maybe she'd been here all along. Or maybe the lake had taken her shape, using her face to drag him back. Outside, thunder rumbled again. He whispered to himself, "If you want me, come get me." The knock came almost instantly, 3 times, on the cabin door. The sound of the knock still hung in the air like a heartbeat. Slow, heavy. 3 times. Ethan stared at the door, his hands trembling over the flashlight. The storm had returned outside, wind pressing hard against the cabin walls, the rain whispering in waves across the roof. "Lena?" he called, his voice cracked. Silence. Another knock. He forced himself to move. Step by step, the floor creaked beneath his boots. He reached the door and pressed his ear against the cold wood. Nothing. He swallowed hard and whispered, "If it's you, please don't do this." Then came a sound he would never forget. A single breath, exhaled slowly, right on the other side. He yanked the door open. No one was there. Only the rain. Only the lake, black and still, reflecting flashes of lightning. He stepped outside, shining the flashlight across the clearing. His breath came in shallow bursts. The mist coiled through the trees, shapes flickering in the fog that looked almost human but never stayed long enough to be sure. Something moved along the shoreline. He turned the beam toward it and froze. It was Lena. Her pale figure walked slowly along the edge of the water, bare feet sinking into the mud. Her white dress was torn, her hair dripping. Her face was calm, too calm, as if the storm didn't touch her. "Lena!" Ethan shouted, his voice swallowed by thunder. She stopped, turned her head just slightly. And though she was over 50 feet away, he swore she smiled. Then she pointed toward the lake. "Come see." Her voice carried faintly through the storm. "It's time." Before he could respond, she turned and walked straight into the water, disappearing beneath it without a ripple. He ran toward her, shouting her name again and again. But by the time he reached the shore, the lake had gone still, silent, indifferent. He dropped to his knees, clutching at the wet earth. "What do you want from me?" He screamed into the darkness. The lake didn't answer, but something else did. A voice, deep, distant, coming from behind him. The lake remembers Ethan, always. He spun around, shining the light wildly, and froze. A man stood at the tree line, just barely visible through the mist. He wore a soaked flannel shirt and jeans, his skin gray and wrinkled like old paper. His eyes were milky white, but his smile, That was familiar. Uncle Mark, Ethan whispered. The figure stepped forward, water dripping from every inch of his body. You left me there, he said, voice gurgling like water through a throat that shouldn't speak. You promised you wouldn't. Ethan stumbled backward. You're not real. The drowned man tilted his head. Neither is she. Lightning flashed, and in that split second, his uncle was gone. Only the rain remained. Ethan fell back against the dirt, gasping. The cold seeped through his skin. He could feel it now, something old, ancient, watching from the depths. It wasn't just the ghost of his uncle. It was something deeper, something that had taken him. He forced himself to stand and stumbled back to the cabin, slamming the door shut and sliding down against it, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then his eyes landed on something new, something lying in the center of the room that hadn't been there before. A journal, old, leather-bound, damp, its pages yellowed and curling. He crawled toward it. The name on the cover was almost illegible under the smears of dirt, but he could still make out the initials, M.C. Mark Carter. His uncle. He flipped it open. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, pages filled with scrawls that spoke of nightmares and things seen in the lake. He read aloud, voice shaking. July 10th, 1984. She came from the water again last night. Beautiful, pale. Said her name was Lena. I know she's not real, but I can't stop seeing her. Ethan froze. July 12th. The lake is hungry. She says it needs a soul to sleep. I told her it can have mine. He turned the page, each one darker than the last. July 16th. I can hear it now. Beneath the surface, the voice says I belong to her. She's the water. She's the hollow. The last entry was dated the day Mark disappeared. If anyone finds this, don't follow her. She wears the face of the one you love. Ethan's hands shook violently. The words blurred through tears he didn't realize were falling. It all made sense now. The face that haunted his uncle was the same one haunting him. Lena wasn't the first, she was the latest. Whatever lived in the lake took the faces of those you loved most. It drew you in piece by piece until you offered yourself willingly, he whispered to himself. It used her face to get to me. The wind howled through the chimney, scattering ash across the floor. From the shadows, something whispered, and it worked. Ethan turned and saw her. Lena stood at the other end of the room, drenched, her dress clinging to her like skin. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, her smile soft and loving. Why are you fighting it? She asked gently. Don't you see? We can be together now. You're not her, he said. She tilted her head, but I feel what she felt. I know what she wanted. She stepped closer. She loved you, Ethan, even at the end. He backed away. Stop. You could join her, she whispered. All you have to do is say yes. He shook his head, tears running down his face. You took her from me! She stopped. For a moment her expression flickered. Pain, sorrow, something almost human. No, she said softly. You gave her to me. Then the floorboard split open beneath her feet. Water poured upward like a living thing. Twisting around her legs, pulling her down, Ethan screamed. Rushing forward, trying to grab her hand, but she was gone, swallowed whole. The water surged up, crashing through the cabin like a wave, throwing him against the wall. He tried to stand, but the current dragged him toward the hole. He clawed at the floor, splinters digging into his skin, but it was too strong. The last thing he saw before being pulled under was the firelight flickering out, and a faint, blue glow beneath the water calling his name. He woke to silence. The world was gray and cold. He was lying on the floor of the cabin, soaked, surrounded by still water that reached up to his knees. The hole in the floor was gone, replaced by smooth, wet wood as if it had never been there. But the door was open. Outside, the fog hung thick over the lake. He stepped out slowly, his breath clouding in the cold air. The sun had risen. but it barely pierced the mist. In the distance, he saw movement again. A figure on the dock. This time he didn't hesitate. He walked toward it, each step heavy and deliberate. When he reached the dock, he realized the figure wasn't Lena. It was his uncle, Mark Carter. Standing there, water dripping from his clothes, eyes lifeless. "You came back," the dead man said. Ethan swallowed hard. "What is this place?" Mark smiled faintly. "It's a mouth, and it's always hungry." He took a step closer. "You can still leave, Ethan, but if you stay, it'll take you too." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then how do I stop it?" Mark's smile faded. "You can't stop it. You can only trade for it." Trade? A soul for a soul. Lightning cracked overhead, and just like that, his uncle was gone. Ethan stood there staring into the water, heart pounding, the weight of those words echoing in his head. "A soul for a soul," he whispered into the fog. "Then take mine." But the lake stayed silent, until a voice answered softly from beneath the surface. "Not yet. You haven't suffered enough." The water rippled, and from the center of the lake, a pale hand reached upward, fingers long and skeletal, breaking through the reflection of the gray sky. Ethan took a step back, trembling. The hand sank again, dragging the light down with it until the entire lake turned black. He realized then, the hollow didn't just want him, it wanted everyone who remembered it. And soon, it would come for more. The mist clung to Ethan's skin like breath from something alive. The lake lay motionless again, its surface smooth as glass, as if the storm, the voices, and the drowned hand had all been dreams. But it wasn't a dream. He could still smell the rot of lake water in his lungs. He walked back to the cabin, each step leaving a wet footprint that vanished seconds later. The old building looked smaller now, weaker, almost as though it knew what was coming. Inside, the air felt colder than before. The fireplace was dead, the floor still damp, and every shadow seemed to breathe. Ethan sat by the window, staring out toward the water. His body trembled from exhaustion, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. A soul for a soul. That was what his uncle had said. If the lake could be bargained with, maybe it could be ended. But whose soul would it take? He clenched his fists. "If it's mine, then fine. Just end it." The silence that followed was almost mocking. He opened the journal again, flipping through the pages for anything he might have missed. Between the scribbled lines and stains, one entry caught his eye. Near the back, written faintly, as though carved in desperation. "The hollow doesn't feed on death. It feeds on love. It takes what's offered freely." Ethan froze. The lake didn't just want any soul. It wanted something willingly given. That's why Lena had been taken. She loved him. She went into the water for him, and now it wanted him to do the same. He slammed the journal shut, breathing hard. No, not like this. He stood, grabbed the lantern, and went to the corner of the cabin where the old trapdoor sat beneath a rug. It led to the cellar, a place his uncle had warned everyone to stay away from. The hinges creaked as he opened it, releasing a blast of cold air that smelled like wet earth and decay. He climbed down slowly, the lantern flickering in his shaking hand. The cellar walls were lined with rotting wood and stone, and in the far corner something glistened. He moved closer. It was a small wooden box, half buried under mud. He wiped it clean and opened it. Inside were old photographs, all ruined by water damage. But some faces were still clear. His uncle, a few locals, and then Lena again. In every photo, she was standing by the lake. Same dress, same expression. But the dates were all different. 1963, 1975, 1984, 1998. He staggered backward, horror flooding his veins. She'd been appearing for decades, maybe centuries, not a ghost, not a victim. The face the lake used, the voice it borrowed, the bait, he whispered. "You're not Lena at all." The lantern flickered violently, shadows twisting along the walls. Then her voice came, soft and close, though he was alone. "Does that make you love me less?" He froze. "You loved her because she looked like this," she whispered. "Because she made you feel seen. But she never belonged to you, Ethan. She belonged to me." "Show yourself," he growled, gripping the lantern tighter. The shadows stretched and pulsed. The cellar seemed to breathe with him. Then, from the darkness, she stepped forward. Lena, or what looked like her. But now her eyes were wrong. Empty holes filled with faint blue light. Her skin rippled like water disturbed by wind. "Why fight it?" she whispered. "You came here to save her. You can't, but you can join her." Ethan stepped back. "You're not her," she smiled faintly. "Then why does your heart still break when you see me?" He couldn't answer. She came closer, her voice lowering into something that felt like it was inside his skull. "The hollow keeps what it loves. Every soul it takes lives forever in the deep. She's there, Ethan, waiting for you." His chest tightened. For a moment, just a moment, he wanted to believe her. To dive back into the lake and feel Lena's arms around him again. But something inside him whispered, no. If that thing had her, it wasn't Lena anymore. He looked at the creature wearing her face and said quietly, "You don't understand love. You only consume it." The thing's expression twisted. "And you waste it," then she screamed, a sound so inhuman it shook the cellar walls. The lantern shattered, plunging everything into darkness. Ethan stumbled back, falling onto the wet floor. The ground split beneath him, water surging up again, pulling at his legs. He tried to grab the ladder, but the current dragged him under. For a few seconds, he was weightless, sinking through black water that glowed faintly blue. He could see faces moving in the depths, dozens of them, men, women, children, all pale, all watching, and in the middle of them, Lena drifted, her hair flowing like ink, her eyes glowing softly. "Ethan," she whispered through the water. "You promised you'd never leave me." He reached for her. "I'm here." Their hands touched, and suddenly, memories that weren't his flooded through him. Every person the lake had ever taken. Every life, every fear, every love it devoured. The hollow wasn't a monster. It was a collection of souls, a living memory of everyone who'd ever drowned in its depths. Lena's voice whispered inside his mind, "Set us free." Then he saw it, the core of the lake pulsing deep beneath them. A glowing heart made of twisted roots and bone. That was it, the source. The thing his uncle called the hollow. He knew what he had to do. Ethan kicked upward, fighting the pull, breaking the surface, gasping for air. He crawled back to the cabin, coughing up water, his body shaking. He grabbed the old kerosene can from beside the fireplace, sloshing it across the walls, the floor, the windows. "I'm ending this," he said, voice trembling. The house moaned as if alive, wind tearing through the cracks. Whispering his name over and over, he lit a match. The flames burst instantly, climbing the walls like serpents of orange and gold. The heat burned his face, but he didn't stop. He staggered outside, watching the cabin blaze against the gray dawn. The smoke rose thick and black, curling into the sky, and the ground trembled. The lake began to churn, waves slamming against the shore, water boiling with furious motion. A scream echoed from beneath the surface, hundreds of voices crying out in agony, then silence. The water went still again, steam rising where the fire's reflection met the lake's skin. Ethan fell to his knees. It was over. Or so he thought, because from the center of the lake, a single ripple formed, then another, and through the mist, Lena's voice whispered once more, "You burned the house, but not the heart." Lightning cracked, illuminating the water, and there beneath the surface, the faint blue glow pulsed again, stronger than before. The hollow wasn't gone. It was awake. The wind had died. The smoke from the burning cabin drifted low over the water, hanging like a shroud. Ethan stood at the edge of the lake, the faint glow beneath the surface pulsing like a heartbeat. The fire behind him crackled and hissed, throwing long shadows that danced across his face. He had thought it was over. He had thought burning the cabin would end the hollow. But now, as he stared at the water turning darker with every breath he took, he realized something terrible. The hollow hadn't died. It had only awakened. He whispered to himself, voice raw, "If you want me, come and take me." The lake answered with silence. Then slowly the ripples spread outward, and a single shape began to rise from the center, a figure, pale and dripping, walking across the surface as if the water itself carried her. Lena, her eyes glowed faintly, her face calm, her white dress untouched by flame or rain. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice echoing across the lake. "You can't kill love." He shook his head. "You're not her. I'm what's left of her," she whispered. "She loved you enough to drown for you. That's how I found her." "What do you want from me?" She smiled, sad, gentle, almost human. The same thing she did. To never be alone. He stepped closer to the shore, the wet sand sucking at his boots. "You destroy everything you touch," she tilted her head. "And yet you came back." The glow beneath her feet grew stronger, spreading through the lake like veins of light. The ground trembled, and the air grew heavy with the scent of rain and ash. Ethan's heart pounded. He could feel the hollow calling to him, not with words, but with memory. Every moment he'd ever shared with Lena replayed in flashes behind his eyes. Her laugh, her tears, the way she used to look at him as if he were the only person in the world. And now that same face was asking him to surrender. He whispered, "If I give you me, will you let her go?" The thing wearing her face smiled faintly. "You can't free her. She is me now, but if you stay, she won't be alone." The words cut through him. He dropped to his knees, fists clenching in the wet dirt. "Then take me," he said through gritted teeth. "Just end this." For a moment the hollow seemed to hesitate. Then Lena, or the hollow inside her, raised her hand. The lake stirred violently, the wind screaming through the trees. The water surged toward him, wrapping around his legs, cold and alive. He gasped as it pulled him under. The world dissolved into darkness and cold. His lungs burned, his heartbeat slowed, and the faint blue glow surrounded him like 1,000 fireflies beneath the surface. And there she was, Lena, floating before him, her hair swirling like black silk. Her eyes soft now, real again. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice muffled by water. "Why did you come back?" He reached for her hand. "To save you." Tears floated from her eyes, rising upward like pearls. "You can't save what's already gone." "Yes, I can," he said, his voice shaking. "If the hollow feeds on love, then let it choke on mine." Before she could answer, he pulled her close and pressed his lips to hers. The water around them exploded in light. The hollow screamed, a sound that wasn't a voice but 1,000 voices crying out in pain and rage. The glow turned blinding white, twisting and convulsing, pulling at them both. Ethan held her tighter. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "Even if it kills me." The lake convulsed one last time. The surface erupted, sending waves crashing against the burning shore. The fire snuffed out instantly, smoke and steam filling the air, and then silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying on the cold ground. The sky above him was gray, streaked with the first pale light of dawn. The lake was still, calm, no longer glowing. He sat up slowly, his body weak. The cabin was gone, burned to black ash. The air was quiet. "Lena?" he called softly. No answer. He walked toward the water's edge. The reflection staring back at him was his own, exhausted, hollow-eyed, but alive. For the first time since he'd come to Hollow Creek, he felt no whispers, no presence, No heartbeat beneath the surface. It was over. He turned to leave, but then stopped. A single ripple spread across the water, and faintly, so faintly he almost missed it, her voice whispered from the depths. "Thank you." Ethan smiled through his tears. "Goodbye, Lena." He turned and walked away from the lake as the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. Behind him, the water shimmered once, bright and blue, and then went still forever. Weeks later, the sheriff found him sitting by the remains of the cabin, staring out at the quiet lake. When asked what happened, he simply said, "The hollow's gone." The sheriff nodded, not understanding, and left him there. Ethan stayed until sunset. Then he stood, looked out at the water one last time, and whispered, "Rest now." He walked away, disappearing down the dirt road, the sound of his footsteps fading into the forest. As night fell, the lake remained silent, but if you stood at the shore long enough, you could still hear a faint heartbeat beneath the surface, soft, slow, waiting, because love, real love, never truly dies. It just finds a new name to whisper. The storm came on a Thursday night, the kind that smothers a city in silence. The rain beat against the windows of the small apartment like 1,000 desperate hands, and the lights across the street flickered in rhythm with the thunder. Eli sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the phone that refused to ring. The screen was cracked from where he'd dropped it that morning, but the name that wasn't calling him still glowed in his mind. Mara. She'd been gone for 3 days. No calls, no texts, no sign of her at work, no footprints in the snow outside her building. Just vanished. At first he'd thought she was ignoring him. Then the police called, not because they found her, but because they hadn't. They'd said something about checking hospitals, cameras, friends, but none of it mattered. The last person she spoke to was him, and the last thing he said to her was, "If you walk away again, don't come back." He rubbed his face, staring at the reflection in the dark window, his own tired eyes looking back, but somehow different. There was something strange about the reflection tonight. Behind him, the room was dimly lit by a single lamp, but in the reflection, the light looked warmer, softer, as if the other side of the glass belonged to another world. Then something in the reflection moved. He turned, but nothing was there. Just the empty apartment, the rain, and that dull, humming silence that fills rooms where people used to talk. He sighed and stood, pacing toward the mirror. "Mara," he whispered to the reflection, "if you're still out there, please." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint whisper, so soft it could have been the rain. "Eli!" He froze. His heart slammed in his chest. The whisper wasn't from behind him. It came from the glass. He stepped closer, breath fogging the mirror. "Mara?" No answer. Just the faint sound of static, like a detuned radio. He reached out, fingertips brushing the cold surface. The glass shivered beneath his touch, and then she appeared, her face faint and translucent, forming like fog within the reflection. Same dark hair, same soft mouth, but her eyes were wrong. They weren't brown anymore. They were silver, shimmering, hollow. "Eli," she whispered again. "You said not to come back." He stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. "What the hell? I'm here," she said softly, her lips moving behind the glass. "You said if I left I shouldn't come back. But I couldn't stay away." The room spun. His throat was dry. "This isn't real." "You're gone?" she asked, smiling faintly. "Not yet." Her hand pressed against the other side of the mirror. It left a faint smear like condensation. He stared at it, trembling. "What happened to you?" he asked. Her expression flickered. Sadness, guilt, and something darker, something deep. "I tried to find you," she said. After I left, I tried to come back, but something followed me home. Something in the reflection. Eli's skin went cold. What do you mean? Her voice dropped. It looks like me. Sounds like me. But it's not. It wanted you. Lightning flashed. For a second, her reflection twisted, her face melting into something wet, pale, and eyeless. He stumbled back, heart hammering. When the light faded, she looked normal again. Eli, please, she whispered. You have to help me. Before it does. Before what does? He shouted. She looked over her shoulder, inside the mirror. Her eyes widened in terror. It's here. The reflection darkened instantly. The light in the room flickered, and for the briefest second, Eli saw something else moving behind her. A tall, thin shadow crawling along the mirrored surface. Then the glass cracked, just one thin line down the center. Mara's image flickered, her voice breaking into static. Don't look. The lights went out. Eli stood frozen in darkness. The sound of rain roaring outside. Then slowly, the light from the street flickered back through the blinds. Just enough for him to see that the mirror had changed again. It no longer showed his reflection. It showed his apartment, exactly as it was, but empty. No him, no light, just the faint shimmer of something standing in the corner where he was supposed to be. He whispered, Mara. The figure turned. It had his face and it smiled. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The rain had stopped. The streets glistened under a weak gray sun, and yet inside Eli's apartment, the air was heavy. Too heavy. The cracked mirror stood against the wall like a wound in the room, a thin fracture cutting through its center like a scar that wouldn't heal. Eli hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mara's face behind the glass, pleading, trembling, breaking into static. He poured coffee with shaking hands, staring at his reflection in the kettle. For a split second, it didn't move with him. The spoon clattered from his hand. Okay, he whispered to himself. You're tired. That's all. But when he turned toward the mirror again, his reflection was smiling. He wasn't. He froze. His pulse pounded so hard he could hear it. Stop it, he muttered. Stop it. The reflection tilted its head just slightly and mouthed something. He leaned closer. It mouthed again. Help me. His breath caught. Mara? The reflection blinked once, and suddenly it was normal again. Just him, pale and terrified. He backed away, heart thundering, nearly tripping over the edge of the carpet. The room felt wrong now, angles off, corners darker than before. Then, a soft tapping. He turned toward the window, but the sound wasn't coming from there. It came from the mirror. Tap, 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 like fingers on glass. Eli swallowed hard, stepping closer. Who's there? The mirror fogged slightly, like someone breathing on the other side. Words began to form, scrawled in the mist by an invisible hand. I can't stay here. He stared, trembling. Mara? The letters faded. Then new ones appeared. It's learning you. What does that mean? He whispered. The fog vanished, and his reflection looked back, this time perfectly synchronized. Same movements, same fear. For a moment, Eli almost convinced himself he'd imagined it all. Then the reflection smiled again. It wasn't a grin of joy. It was the slow, deliberate smile of something that finally understands its prey. He stumbled back, knocking over the coffee cup. What do you want? The reflection didn't answer. It simply pointed toward the door behind him. He turned. The door to his bedroom was half open. He'd left it closed last night. Slowly, he pushed it open. The curtains were drawn tight, the bed untouched. The air was freezing, and then he saw it, a photo frame lying face down on the floor. He picked it up. It was a picture of him and Mara, taken last summer, smiling at a fair cotton candy between them. the sun golden on her hair, but as he stared, the image began to change. The colors drained, the smiles faded, and Mara's face turned toward him, inside the photo. Her eyes were silver again. Her mouth opened, whispering silently. He dropped the frame, stumbling backward. The glass shattered on the floor, scattering reflections in every direction, each one showing him from a slightly different angle. But in each, his eyes were not his own. They were hers. The apartment lights flickered. The air began to hum, a deep electric vibration that shook the walls. Eli clutched his head. Stop it!" The humming stopped, and then, in the silence, a single whisper echoed from the living room. "Eli." He turned. Mara was standing there, not in the mirror, but in the room. Her dress was soaked, her skin pale as wax, her hair clinging to her shoulders. Water pooled around her bare feet. He couldn't move. "Mara?" She smiled faintly. "You said you'd never stop looking for me." His throat tightened. I didn't know how to find you." "You did," she said softly, walking closer. "You called me." Through the glass. Her voice was gentle, hypnotic. But something about her eyes, they didn't blink. "Mara, what happened to you?" She stopped inches away, looking up at him. "I found the reflection that breathes." He swallowed. "What?" She touched his cheek. Her fingers were cold enough to burn. "It's not just a reflection, Eli. It remembers us. Every word, every fight, every kiss. It waits until we look long enough. Then it learns how to breathe." Her hand slid down his arm, her grip tightening. "When we stop seeing each other, it replaces us." His breath hitched. "Replaces?" Her smile flickered, her expression breaking into something desperate. "Eli, you have to break the glass. Before it finishes." Before he could answer, a sudden crash came from behind her. The mirror had fallen from the wall, and in it, her reflection was still standing, perfectly still, perfectly smiling. The real Mara turned slowly to face it. Her reflection raised its hand in the same motion, but then it didn't stop. It pressed its palm flat against the inside of the glass. The real Mara began to tremble. "Eli," she whispered. "It's trying to..." The reflection's smile widened, splitting her face unnaturally. The glass rippled like water. Mara screamed, and in a blink she was yanked backward, vanishing into the mirror. Eli shouted, running forward. But the glass went still again, unbroken. Smooth, cold, and staring back at him now. Was her reflection, not his, just her, smiling. The mirror stood upright again, clean and cold, showing nothing but Mara's face. She stared out from behind the glass, her smile faint and wrong, like she was pretending to remember how it felt to be human. Eli froze, one hand still reaching for where she'd been. The air felt heavier now, pressing down on his chest. The apartment seemed smaller, darker, as if the walls were closing in. He whispered, "Mara?" Her smile didn't move. He hit the glass once with his palm. "Mara, talk to me." Still nothing, just his own shaking reflection beside hers. Then, faintly, he heard it again. Her voice, not from the mirror this time, but from inside his head. "Eli, you shouldn't have looked too long." He stumbled back, heart pounding. "Where are you?" "Behind it." His gaze darted around the room. The mirror's surface rippled slightly, like water disturbed by breath. "I can get you out," he said. "No," she whispered. "It's not about getting out. It's about remembering which side you belong to." Lightning flashed outside, filling the apartment with white light for a single heartbeat, and in that instant, everything changed. The reflection of the room was no longer the same. It was reversed, darker, colder, with shadows that moved on their own, and in the reflection, Eli saw himself standing still while Mara reached toward him, whispering something he couldn't hear. He blinked, and the image shifted again. Now he was on her side, He looked around wildly. The apartment was the same layout, but wrong. The walls were blackened like smoke stains, the air thick and cold. The clock on the wall ticked backward. "Mara?" he called, his voice echoing strangely. She appeared in the hallway, the real one, or at least what looked like her. She was trembling, her face pale, her eyes wide. "Eli," she said softly, "you crossed over." He took a step toward her, but his legs felt heavy, like wading through syrup. "What is this place?" "The other side of the glass," she whispered. "Where reflections go when we stop believing they're just reflections." Her words made no sense, but every part of him felt them. "I came for you," he said. She shook her head slowly. "No, you came for the version of me you couldn't let go." "What are you talking about?" She looked down. "I wasn't taken by the mirror, Eli. I let it in." His chest tightened. "You're saying I wanted to disappear," she said softly. "You remember that night we fought? When you said I didn't really love you? I looked into the mirror after you left, and it looked back at me. It promised I could start over, if I gave it my reflection." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know it meant my soul." Eli's throat went dry. He reached out, but she stepped back, fear flashing in her eyes. "Don't," she whispered. "Every touch here is a trade. You give, it takes. That's how it survives." Something moved behind her, a flicker of blackness crawling along the wall like liquid shadow. It stretched tall, eyeless, a distorted outline of a human shape. "Mara." She turned slowly. "It knows you're here now." The thing behind her began to smile, not with a mouth, but with cracks splitting across its face. Eli grabbed her arm. "Run!" They sprinted through the warped apartment, down a corridor that shouldn't exist. Doors lined the walls, dozens of them, each showing flashes of different memories. The night they met, their first kiss, their last fight. Every door opened into another version of their life together. Mara stopped at one, a small, bright memory. The beach, the day she told him she loved him. "I remember this," he whispered. She turned to him, tears on her cheeks. "It's feeding on what we remember most." Behind them, the sound of cracking glass grew louder. The creature was following, its steps making the walls fracture like ice. Eli looked around desperately. "How do we get out?" Mara's voice trembled. "We can't leave through memory. We have to go deeper." She grabbed his hand, and before he could protest, she pulled him through the next door. They fell, not down, but through. He landed hard, gasping. The world around them was silent, gray, endless. A floor made of mirror stretched in every direction, reflecting a sky that didn't exist. Mara stood beside him, eyes wide. "We're at the heart," she whispered. "This is where it decides who stays and who leaves." Eli looked around. Dozens of reflections began forming in the glass beneath their feet. Versions of them both, all slightly different. In one they were happy, in another fighting. In another, she was crying alone. Every reflection moved without them. Mara took his hand, her fingers shaking. "It wants us to forget which one is real." The ground trembled. The reflections began to rise, climbing out of the mirror like living glass. Eli shouted, pulling her close. "We can fight it!" "No," she said softly. "We have to remember what's real. Close your eyes. Think of me, the real me." He shut his eyes. He remembered her laugh, her warmth, the way she'd hum when she cooked. "I remember," he whispered. Her hand tightened in his, and then, for the first time since the storm began, the air filled with light, pure, blinding white that shattered the silence. The reflections screamed, their forms cracking like ice in fire. When Eli opened his eyes, he was back in his apartment. The mirror lay shattered on the floor. He was alone. "Mara," he whispered. No answer, just his reflection, cracked, broken, and smiling faintly back at him. Then her voice echoed, faint and distant, like a memory fading underwater. "Don't look too long, Eli. Not every reflection lets you go." He turned away, and for the first time in days, the mirror stayed still. But behind him, in one of the broken shards on the floor, a single drop of water rippled, and in that reflection, Mara blinked. Night came fast, though Eli swore the sun had never risen. The apartment was darker than ever, shadows thick and pulsing, like the walls themselves were breathing. The shattered mirror on the floor hadn't stopped dripping. Each shard held a tiny reflection that trembled, alive, remembering. Eli sat on the floor, staring at them, every piece showing something slightly different. In one shard he was crying, in another he was sleeping, and in the largest one he wasn't there at all, only Mara, staring back, whispering soundlessly. He reached for it. The glass pulsed under his fingertips, warm, wet. A faint heartbeat echoed through it. He snatched his hand back, gasping. His fingers were bleeding, a thin cut glowing faintly silver beneath the skin. He stumbled to his feet. "No," he whispered. "No more." But the mirrors whispered back. "You let her in. You left her here. You promised you wouldn't look away." The voices were his own. His reflection, multiplied. He kicked the shards away, glass scattering across the floor, but the whispers didn't stop. From the kitchen window, his reflection appeared again. Wrong, delayed. When he turned, it didn't. It just smiled, slow and wide. "You're not me," he said through gritted teeth. It tilted its head. "Not yet." Then the window buckled, glass bending inward like liquid. A pale hand pushed through, followed by another. Eli screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a chair, and smashed it against the window. The glass exploded outward in a shower of silver, but instead of shattering, the shards hung in the air, floating, spinning. Each shard showed a different version of him, some screaming, some silent, one whispering something he couldn't hear, and then they began to move. The reflections crawled out of the shards, their bodies slick, featureless, eyes like holes burned into their faces. They moved like shadows trying to learn how to walk. Eli backed up, breathing hard. "Stay away!" But they kept coming, their movements jerky, glitching through space. One moment far, the next right in front of him. He swung the chair again, but it passed through one of them like smoke. The thing leaned close, whispering with his own voice. "You don't belong out there anymore." The sound filled his head like static. He clutched his ears, falling to his knees. The room flickered between two realities, his world and the mirrored one. The furniture reversed. The lights pulsed backward, and in every flash Mara appeared, in every reflection, in every piece of glass, screaming silently as something dragged her deeper. Eli crawled toward the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. The mirror above the sink stared down at him, cracked in the middle. He tore a towel off the rack and threw it over the glass, panting. The whispering stopped. For a moment he felt safe. Then, drip. Water fell from the covered mirror. Another drop. Then another. The towel grew darker, wetter. He pulled it off. Behind it, the mirror wasn't cracked anymore. It was open. Water poured out like a burst pipe, flooding the floor, and through it, Mara's hand reached out. Her skin was pale, veins glowing faint blue beneath the surface. "Eli," she whispered, voice trembling. "Please, help me." He hesitated only a second before grabbing her hand. The moment their fingers touched, the bathroom dissolved. The tiles, the walls, the light, gone. He was back in the mirrored world. The same endless gray expanse, the floor gleaming like liquid metal beneath his feet. The air was thick, humming like electricity. But this time, it wasn't empty. Hundreds of reflections surrounded him. Warped, broken versions of himself and Mara. walking in endless circles, whispering, crying, screaming. At the center of them all stood a tall, thin figure, the same one that had smiled through the cracks. Its face was blank now, its surface reflective, showing everything and nothing at once. Eli stared. "What are you?" The thing's voice was every voice he'd ever heard. His, hers, their arguments, their laughter, all layered into one. "We are what's left when love outlives the living." It stepped closer, the mirrored floor cracking under its feet. "You made her promise never to leave." "She kept it." Eli shook his head, backing away. "That's not what I meant." "Intent doesn't matter here," it whispered. "Only reflection." Behind it, Mara appeared again, her face calm now, her eyes silver. "Eli, stop fighting. You'll only make it stronger. I came to save you," he shouted. She smiled faintly. "Then save me from you." The creature reached out its hand. The surface of its palm rippled like water, and inside it, Eli saw every moment of his life with Mara, every argument, every apology, every reflection that had ever watched them. He realized then, it didn't just feed on love. It fed on guilt, on everything left unsaid between them. He clenched his fists. "You can't have us." The thing's mirrored face cracked into 1,000 lines, a grin splitting open. "We already do." It lunged. Eli grabbed a shard of mirror from the floor and drove it into the creature's chest. The glass screamed, literally screamed, shattering the silence in a deafening wail. Light exploded from the wound. The mirrored figures dissolved one by one, their voices fading into static. Mara reached for him, tears streaming down her face. "Eli, it's breaking! We have to go!" He took her hand, and together they ran, across the cracking surface, toward a faint light that looked like the surface of real water above them. The creature's voice echoed behind them. "You can't run from what you see." The floor gave way. Eli pushed Mara upward, forcing her through the light, shouting, "Go!" She vanished. The surface sealed behind her. He was left alone. The creature's shadow loomed over him. It spoke softly now, almost kindly. There must always be one left to remember. Eli looked down at the shard in his hand, glowing, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Then remember this." He stabbed it into the floor. The entire world shattered. A scream rose from every reflection, from every surface, until there was nothing left but silence. When Eli opened his eyes again, he was lying in the bathroom. The mirror was gone. Just broken tiles, cold water, and his reflection staring up from the puddle. He crawled to the living room. The apartment was quiet again, still. On the floor, one shard remained unbroken. Inside it, he saw Mara, smiling softly. Then her smile faded, and his reflection smiled instead. Morning came, but it wasn't morning. Light filled the apartment, but it wasn't sunlight. It shimmered too bright, like reflection instead of radiance. Eli sat in the center of the living room, surrounded by the broken remains of the mirror. He hadn't slept. He hadn't dared. Every shadow that moved, every flicker in the corner of his eye, made him flinch. Mara's voice still echoed softly in the air. Not a haunting, not a hallucination, but something worse. "Don't look too long, Eli." He squeezed his eyes shut. Her voice came from inside. The last shard, the only one left whole, sat on the coffee table. It pulsed faintly with silver light, like a dying heartbeat. Inside it, Mara's face appeared sometimes, and sometimes it was his. He'd tried throwing it away once. It had returned. Now he just watched it. Hours passed. Or maybe none at all. The clock on the wall ticked backward again. His phone screen flickered, showing a reflection of him smiling when he wasn't. Something had changed since he stabbed the mirror. The world around him bent subtly, quietly. Every reflection, window, metal, even water, felt like it was breathing, remembering him. The mirror wasn't dead. It was awake, and Eli could feel it watching. He picked up the shard. His own reflection inside smiled faintly before he did. "Why are you still here?" he whispered. The reflection's lips moved slower, lagging behind, then caught up. "Because you invited me." The voice wasn't Mara's. It was his, deeper, softer, smoother, like a version of himself that had never felt guilt, never lost control. He dropped the shard. It didn't hit the ground. It floated midair, spinning gently. "You wanted to save her," it said. "You wanted to bring her back. But what did you bring instead?" Eli backed away, breath shallow. "I brought her soul back. Did you?" the voice asked, almost kind. "Or did you just open the door wider?" Every surface in the apartment rippled at once. The TV screen, the dark window, even the polished edge of the sink. All of them began showing different versions of him, some screaming, some crying, some smiling like strangers. In one, Mara stood beside him, but her eyes were black mirrors, and her smile was wrong. Eli covered his face. "Stop, please!" The reflections whispered together. "We remember. We forgive. We become." The apartment began to hum, low and deep, as if the building itself had started to breathe. The shard floated higher, spinning faster, shedding tiny glints of silver dust that hung in the air like snow. From inside the shard, Mara's voice emerged again, quiet and broken. "Eli, it's still hungry." He looked up sharply. "Mara?" Her image flickered in the shard. "It needs balance," she said. "It needs one of us to stay." He shook his head violently. "No, I already left once." "I can't lose you again." Tears streaked down her face. "You already did." The air trembled. The light bent. The reflections around him started merging, the different versions of himself bleeding together into one shape. Tall, black, mirror-faced. The creature from before, reborn. It stepped through the broken air as if stepping through water, every motion fluid, soundless. "You tore the glass apart," it said. "But a mirror doesn't break. It multiplies." Eli reached for the shard, gripping it tight. It burned against his palm, fusing to his skin like molten ice. "Then I'll end it," he whispered. The thing tilted its head. "To end it, you must decide which side is real." The lights flickered. His apartment melted away. Suddenly, he was back in that gray mirrored expanse, infinite reflections stretching in every direction. Mara stood across from him, her body half shadow, half light, eyes filled with sorrow. "Eli," she whispered, "you have to let me go." He shook his head. "I won't. I can fix this." "I can—" "Listen to me," she said, stepping closer. The floor beneath her feet rippled like water. "It's not about fixing. It's about ending. If both of us stay, the mirror never stops. It feeds forever." Eli's throat tightened. "Then let me be the one. Let me stay." Mara smiled, the same soft, heartbreaking smile she had the day they first met. "That's what it wants, Eli. It wants you to offer yourself." That's how it keeps going. He realized it then. The creature hadn't tricked him. It had taught him how to surrender. He clenched his fists. "Then what do I do?" She touched his face gently, her fingers cool as glass. "You do what love was meant to do." "You end it!" The mirrored creature screamed then, a sound like glass shattering inside his skull. The reflections around them began collapsing inward, folding into a whirlpool of silver light. Mara stepped back, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Remember me," she said. "But don't see me." Eli's heart broke. "Mara, wait!" She placed her hand over her chest. Her form began to fracture, glowing lines running through her skin like lightning. He ran toward her, but every step dragged like walking through water. She smiled one last time and shattered. The light consumed everything. Eli screamed, reaching for her, but all he touched was cold air, then silence. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the floor of his apartment. Morning sunlight, real this time, poured through the window. The mirror was gone. Every shard, every reflection, vanished. Only the faint outline of where it had hung remained. A dark rectangle burned into the wall. Eli stood slowly. His body ached. His reflection stared back from the window. Normal. Just him. He almost smiled. Then the reflection blinked. He hadn't. It smiled faintly. And in that smile, for just a second, he saw her, Mara, standing behind it, eyes calm. Hand on his reflection's shoulder, he froze. The reflection lifted a hand and wrote a single word on the glass. In breath that shouldn't exist. Remember. Then the window cracked. Just once, a thin line. Like the first heartbeat of something waking up again. Eli backed away slowly, whispering, "No. No, please." The crack spread across the glass with a soft, almost gentle sound. Outside, the sunlight flickered, as if the world itself had blinked. And from somewhere deep within that reflection, Mara's voice came one last time, quiet and eternal. "Love always finds its reflection." The glass shattered. The screen went black.